play and call it work.
MiniWarGamer Dave here from MiniWarGaming.com, here with Luka. Welcome, Wargamers, to the How to Play video for Aetherium. This is a sponsored video, and it is by Anvil 8 Games. If you want to purchase the game itself, you can click on the links in the video description below. Make sure to enter the promo code MiniWar12 to get 15% off the Aetherium game, as well as any and all products on their online store. There's also a link to their Facebook page in the video description. So we're going to show you the bare bones basics of how to play this game. It's a lot of fun. We've already played the game. You looked over it a couple times. Yep. We did the tutorial already off camera so that it can be smoother on camera. Yeah. And we also did an unboxing video. So make sure to watch that first if you haven't seen that already, in order to learn all of the terminology and just to see exactly what's in the box, because we may not necessarily show you everything that's in the box in this how to play video. We're going to be focusing on the game mechanics and simply how to play. The missions in Aetherium are called operations. Out of those operations, there's actually one that's called a tutorial operation that's included in the rulebook, and we're going to be going through the tutorial operation in this how to play video. We're going to be going through it step by step, and we're going to be following it to a T. So it's basically a video visualization demonstration of what you get in the rulebook, so as to better understand what you're looking at and what you're reading. So you could follow along, and you could actually set up your game as we are playing and play along at the same time. Step 1, set up your quantum noise mat. The map shows the deployment of all of the tiles, the nodes, the pylons, and the models, and we're going to be following that. The server consists of the quantum noise map and the schemas. The schemas are the tiles on the board. There's a large schema, 2 medium-sized schemas, and 2 small schemas. We've placed a node in the middle of the large schema, and we've placed 4 pylons on the medium and small schemas. Let's place the armies now. Armies have been placed. Let's show which models are where. On this medium-sized schema, we have Mistrona. She is the avatar for the Axiom faction. In front of her, we have 5 Praetorians. This pylon is already being secured and held by the Axiom, hence this symbol there with this token. The small schema next to the one with Mistrona, we have the Grenadier. He's really close to this pylon. Doesn't quite hold it yet, but once he does, another token will be placed here to indicate that this is another Axiom-controlled pylon. On the opposite side, we have the mask, which is located right there in front of the pylon, and in front of the mask, we have 3 Riot Girls. And on this small schema on this side, we have Tav in the corner, also not controlled by the Nanomei. And in the middle, we have this large schema with the pylon in the middle, which is currently unoccupied, or this node rather, this large node in the middle, not occupied by anybody, and that is the objective of the game. At the end of the 5th recalibration, whoever holds that wins the game. Next, we're going to set up our command console. First things first, we have to grab our console damage deck and put it on each of the areas that it's going to have a character on it. These will come into play once these characters die. And for example, subroutines in this collective suffer -2 CS for the remainder of the game. This card may not be assigned to a subroutine program. So it just makes it harder for you to activate and to get RAM and to move, and just there's a variety of different things that it does, and each one is different. So we're not going to go through each one. You'll just have to read it and apply it to the game as it comes up. I'm going to place the data cards on top. Lady Emilia Mistrona is the avatar, leader of the army. The function is the Grenadier, and the subroutine is the Praetorians. This is for the Axiom faction. Make sure you have 2 tokens to keep track of your RAM and your recalibration. Your recalibration is basically like your turns. So at the end of the 5th recalibration, that'll be the end of the game for you. Last thing you'll do here is you're going to grab your program activation deck, which consists of your 3 types of units, and you're going to shuffle them in such a way so as to activate in this order. Now your opponent doesn't know the order that you'll activate these units, only you will know. And the top card will be the first one activated, and then you go by a you-go-I-go basis. So after the first one has been activated and finished all of its actions, then a unit on the opposing side will do the same thing, and then you'll come back and you'll activate another program, and you keep on going until you've completed all of your programs, and that's when you recalibrate. Now it's time to dissect one of these cards and figure out what everything means here. At the top is the name of the unit, then it's their title, basically. So the avatar means that it's the leader of this army. RAM 3, that is an avatar-specific ability which tells you how much RAM you get at the beginning of each recalibration. So in her case, she gives you 3, so we're just going to put it up to 3. The top right, you'll see CS6 and 1 OC. CS stands for cycle speed, which are basically your action points. So she has 6 action points and she has 1 overclocked action point, which allows her to spend an extra action. You need to spend RAM in order to do this, and it gives her a potential 7 actions that she's able to spend on her turn. CS can be spent on movement or .exe abilities. .exe abilities are on the back of the card, which we'll go over in just a moment. Now let's go over these things, these icons, and what they mean. These dice correspond with the icons listed here. They are 12-sided dice. There's one of 5 possible scenarios here. You have a switch, a chip, a short, a crash, or a disruption. Now, the disruption is basically a cog that surrounds one of the icons. So this short has a cog around it, whereas this is just a regular short. Same with this. This is a switch, or a chip rather, and it has a cog around it. So it's kind of like a critical role. That's how I would describe it. Everyone has an attack profile, and that is indicated here with these symbols and with the numbers. So this is my criteria in order to gain this much damage output. So I have here a switch and 2 shorts. If I roll that with my dice, then I'll get that much damage. For example, right here, I got a switch and 2 shorts. Would you look at that? So I actually met the criteria. I got all 3, and I go to the 3rd number there. I do 3 damage. Now let's say I were to have rolled this, and I only got 2 of the criteria. Then I look at the 2nd number, and I would have done 2 damage. And same thing goes for only 1. If I only got 1 of the 3, then I look at the 1st number, and that's how much damage I do. It only would have been 1. The name of her attack is called Master Key. It has a range of 3. So something needs to be within 3 inches or 3 squares away from me. Not inches, it's squares. And then relocate. So that disruption icon tells me that when I roll my dice, if I get at least 1 there, I'm able to apply this effect. For example, here we have Mastrona, and she's attacking a Riot Girl. So let's say she's successful and she rolls a disruption. She's able to relocate her, rematerialize her anywhere on this schema. So I can place her right there if I really wanted to. And then we got the stability grid right down there, which is basically your hit points. And that shows how many boxes are able to be filled until she's dead. In her case, it's 12. And you can use a dry erase marker on this, and that comes off really easily. And to go with the theme of the game, instead of dying, you get deleted. So that's more appropriate. Let's flip this card around to show you what we got on the back. On the back are .exe and safeguard. So EXE, that's basically your abilities that you get. They could be offensive or defensive, and they cost CS in order for you to spend them and activate them. So on the front, we have CS6, so we know that she has at least 6 that she can spend and activate some of these abilities on the back. So for example, Key to the City is passive. That actually doesn't cost any CS. So it says at the start of her activation, she may materialize in any unoccupied square up to 3 squares away, which is very useful. That allows you to pass barriers and just relocate herself to more strategic positions. Royal Guard is 3 CS, and you choose a friendly program within 3 squares, and until the start of her next activation, the chosen program gains Badge of Office, and this model loses Badge of Office. What's badge of office, you should say? That is her safeguard, which is her defensive ability. And it says, before rolling the combat dice, instead of using the normal target symbols, the attacking program must change its target symbols to disruption symbols. And the disruption symbols can still also be used to trigger disruption effects as normal. So for example, let's grab one of the enemy cards there. It says that the symbols here, instead of the normal symbols for the criteria for the damage, they all become disruptions. So this character here would have to roll these, you see the disruptions around the symbols, in order to actually work. And that's 3. So the criteria is 3. So for example, if this riot girl rolled this, there's 1 disruption symbol, it counts as 1 successful attack, and there would be 1 damage. And that would be 2 successful, because there's 2 disruption symbols, and that would be 3 damage. An important thing to note is safeguard abilities are only triggered when they are attacked by another program unless stated otherwise. Last thing to go over here with the programs is to mention the fact that there are segmented subroutines and linked subroutines. Basically what that means is they act as groups, either independent of each other or in unison. So the Riot Girls, for example, is segmented 3 subroutine. The number after the segmented indicates the amount of models in the unit, and segmented means that they act independent of each other. And the linked subroutine for the Praetorians, it's linked 5, so there's 5 models in this unit, and they act in unison. So when one model moves and ends its move, all other models must be adjacent to it when they are placed. And then here are the stability grids, or the hit points, and they have different colors to indicate that they represent each model in the unit. So there's 3 different colors in the Riot Girls, so there's 3 models there, and there's 5 different colors in the Praetorians to show that there are 5 different Praetorian models. Segmented and linked subroutines have coordinated attacks. So they have an extra ability, which they get because they are the special units that they are, special programs that they are. And that's another important thing to note, because they're the only ones that get that. Looking at the server now, what we're going to do is Luka and I are going to roll off to see who goes first. And we're just going to determine that by the amount of crits that we get. So
That's a really good roll.
I get 2 and
So
he
I
gets
get
1.
one
So
crit?
that matches, but I have 1 more than him, so I'll go first for the purposes of this demonstration. And we'll just go over the first couple rounds here, going back and forth, just to show you the mechanics of the game. Before I do anything, the first thing that I need to do is determine how much RAM I have. First I look at my avatar, my lady Amelia Mastrona, and she says RAM 3, so I put this up to 3. And then I check and see how many pylons I control. On the board over here, there are 2 pylons on my side. I control one of them, as is indicated by my symbol. I get another RAM for that. I'll move that up to 4. And I actually do this at the start of every recalibration, which is basically the turn. Now I go through my program activation cards and I determine the order that I'll be using these. So just for fun, let's do this. Let's make it so she is first. Now normally Luka wouldn't see this. The opposing player would not see it, so she's going to go first. Actually, we'll do this. She'll go first, and then Grenadier will go second, Praetorians will go last, and then I'll flip it over, and that's the order that they're going to be activated. And as I activate them, and as they go through the turns, as the programs go through their turns, and I use RAM, which you'll see how we use RAM during the turn, it doesn't actually spill over. It does replenish back up to it at the start of the next recalibration, but I don't get to cache up RAM and go all the way up. I only get the max amount that I have that is allotted to me as per the amount of RAM that I get from my avatar and the RAM that I get for the pylons that I'm controlling. Now the node in the middle, that affords me 2 RAM in addition to anything else I might control. So first thing I'll do is activate Amelia. Now during this activation of this program, I'm actually able to spend RAM and use my RAM to move Amelia extra squares should I want, or I could use that to move the schema. And just for fun, I'm going to move one of the schema.
All right.
I'm going to move the schema 1, 2, 3, and that uses 3 of my RAM, so I'll go down to 1. Now, which schema am I able to control using RAM? I am actually able to control anything that I hold, any of the pylons that I hold, as well as any neutral schemas that aren't held by the opposing player. So if I really wanted to, I could move that one as well, or that one, or even the one in the middle, should I have enough RAM to do so. Just going back for a moment here, it costs 3 RAM for me to move up 3 squares with this schema, but let's say I wanted to rotate it. Since this is a medium-sized schema, it would have cost 5 RAM to do so. I didn't actually have enough to do that. I only had 4 at the beginning of my turn, but for demonstration purposes, let's say I did have 5, it would cost 5 for me to rotate it this way, and it would actually cost an additional RAM to move forward 1 square at a time, so that'd be a total of 8 RAM if I really wanted to do that, if I had 8 RAM to do so. But since I didn't, we'll just stick with the original plan to move that forward 3. Now that's for a medium-sized schema. For a small schema, it's 3 RAM to rotate it. And for the large one in the middle, it's 7 RAM to rotate it. That's if I control it or if it's neutral. If it is controlled by the opposing player, then I am not allowed to rotate it or move it or control that schema. If I wanted to just move these schemas linear, then it only ever costs 1, no matter the size of the schema. So that costs 1, 2, 3 RAM to do so, whether it's the small, medium, or large. And I can also move diagonally if I wanted to. That costs 1 RAM. It's only when you rotate it, it costs different amounts of RAM. Going back to Amelia Mastrona's turn, we're going to make sure that she's able to use her cycle speed. Now she has 6 cycle speed, which is indicated right there on her card, and those are basically action points. It costs 1 cycle speed per movement, and I'm going to actually activate or use her ability to materialize. I'm just going to look at the back of her card there. That is an EXE ability that I have. It's Key to the City. It's passive, and it says at the start of this program's activation, the model may materialize in any unoccupied square up to 3 squares away. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I'll go right there just to show you that I can do so. That doesn't cost any cycle speed to do so. I'm just able to do that. That's a passive EXE ability that I have. Taking a closer look here at the tile, or at the schema, you see these little symbols there. You see that symbol with a squiggle through it and that symbol with an X through it. The X means that it is impassable. So I can't land on top of it or I can't move through it unless I utilize her special ability, which allows me to materialize 3 squares away from my original starting point. This icon right there with a squiggle through it, that just makes me move, that takes out twice the amount of movement. So instead of costing 1 cycle speed to move through it, it costs 2. And they are called resistor tiles. So let's say, for example, I started here. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 CS that I'd be using there, cycle speed, because I went through a number of resistor tiles. That is an impassable tile. I wouldn't be able to move through that at all. There's one last icon that we're going to look at here, and it is this right there. And that symbolizes that it is an obstruction, which means that it is line of sight blocking. So I will not be able to see on the other side of that, nor will Luka be able to see through it. Now to use her EXE abilities and pass off some cool effects onto this unit of Praetorians. The first one that we'll do is Royal Executioner. As we can see there, it is -3 CS, which means it costs 3 cycle speed to use, and it says choose a friendly program within 3 squares, which they are. During its next activation, the chosen program adds 2 to all of its damage thresholds for any attacks it makes. And so we have a nice little token here, Royal Executioner, to let us know that they have been buffed with that ability. The second one that I'll give them is Keymaster. Keymaster says choose a friendly program within 3 squares. During its next activation, the chosen program gains Key to the City. And Key to the City is the passive ability that she has, which allows her to move 3 squares away from her and in an unoccupied square and materialize there. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to give those two abilities to my Praetorians. Both of those abilities cost 3 CS each, which is the amount of cycle speed that I have. I'm not going to overclock and use the extra one that I have. It would cost an extra RAM to do that. There's no reason for me to do that at this time. So play goes on to Luka, and Emilia is now done her turn. On Luka's turn, what he's going to do is figure out how much RAM he has. The mask has RAM 3, so we're going to move the RAM up to 3, and we're going to see how many pylons he holds. He holds 1, which means he gets an extra RAM, so he's going to move it up to 4. And then he will activate his first program. First program is Tav, which is this guy right here. Tav is right here. He's a square away from this pylon, so he's going to move up to it, and he's going to activate it to make it his own. He's going to hold it. Now that costs a certain amount of CS to do. That costs 3 if it is unoccupied. Let's say it was an Axiom controlled pylon. What would happen is he would need to spend 4 CS in order to steal it back and make it a Nanomei pylon. So we have a nice little token there to signify that. So that costed him 1-2 CS for the movement, 3 more for the activation, for a total of 5 CS, and that's how many he's going to use. Are you going to use 2 extra to overclock, use any RAM to overclock, to do any extra actions? And the answer is yes. So Luka is going to move this medium-sized schema 1, 2, 3 squares forward, which costs 3 RAM. 1, 2, 3. And so he is down to 1 as well. His last RAM he will spend to bump this back. Now this is, so he's going diagonal back then. Now this is a small schema that has my Grenadier on it, and because it's neutral, it's not, the pylon isn't activated or controlled by any particular faction, he is able to do that, and he makes it just a bit harder for me to move in, and why not, he says. So Tav has gone, he is done, now it's back, play passes over to Axiom. So I will activate my next program on this side, which is my Grenadier. Taking a look at the cycle speed that my Grenadier has, 5 and 1 more to overclock should I choose to move my extra RAM and use my extra RAM. So I will use 1, 2 cycle speed to move forward, and I'm going to use 3 more to activate this pylon to make it an Axiom pylon so that Luka can't control it anymore. Control the schema and move it around on me. Now the Grenadier also has his own EXE ability on the back as well as a safeguard, but we're not going to be using that at the moment. Right now it's more important to take and control these pylons so that we have more RAM. Play passes back over to the Nanomei, and Luka is going to activate the mask, which is his avatar, the leader of his army. And there he is right there in front of this pylon on the medium-sized schema. He's going to use his CS to move. So that's 1, 2, 3, and he can move diagonally, no problem.
4, 5, because it's resisting.
Okay, he went through 4, 5, and then 6. He has a total of 6 cycle speed, and he doesn't have any more RAM, so he can't overclock him, and so that's the end of his activation. I'm going to activate my last program, which are my Praetorians. Now because Emilia gave them Keymaster, they are able to move 3 squares away from them, adjacent, and materialize. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and the rest are just going to move 1, 2, 3 as well. And 1, 2, 3, that's 3 squares. And then I'll use 1 CS to move forward so that I am in base contact with that node. And since I moved using CS and I chose this guy first, all the other Praetorians have to be adjacent to him, so I'm going to move this guy over here. And just to note here, that little resistor there, it doesn't cost anything to move out of it, it only costs to move into it, so it would still be 1 CS to move out. So the Praetorians have a total of 4 cycle speed and then 1 for overclocking. What I'm going to do is, because I spent 1 to move them, I have 3 left plus 1 for overclocking. I'm going to use the 3 and then spend 1 RAM to overclock, which gives me 4. And it costs 4 to activate this node and to make it mine. So I'm going to do that. That's the end of my activation, and play passes over to Nanomei. Program activation of your last program, and that's going to be the Riot Girls on the Nanomei side. Now the Riot Girls are a segmented subroutine, which means they act independently of each other even though they're one program, and you move one and complete the move until they're done. Which means because they have a cycle speed of 4 and overclocking 2, they can each use 4 cycle speed. So Luka's just going to move them forward, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. The next one, 1, 2, 3, and the next one, 1, 2, 3, 4. On to the Axiom turn. I don't have any more programs to activate, so what I need to do is recalibrate. So I'm going to go to recalibration 1, and when I do that, I get to reorganize my programs and bring them up. I also need to replenish my RAM, and to do that, same as before, I look at the amount of RAM that my avatar has, which is 3, so I'm going to bring that up to 3. And now I'm going to calculate how much RAM I get for all of the nodes and pylons I occupy or I control. It looks like I control 1, 2 pylons, which gives me 2 RAM, and the node in the middle, which gives me another 2, for a total of 4 extra RAM. So I'm going to move that all the way up to 7. I've reorganized my program activation deck, and now it's time to activate my first program, which are my Praetorians, my subroutine. Now, for my Praetorians, before I do anything else, what I'm going to do is have a little bit of fun, and I'm going to rotate this large schema. It costs 7 RAM to do that. I have 8 right now, so I'm going to go ahead and do that this way, which is counterclockwise. The thing I love about this mechanic in this game is that that really messes up the strategy of the opponent, because look at this. His army is now divided. His Tav is on that small schema alone, and the rest of his army is over there. The rest of his faction is on this side. And then I'll move my RAM counter all the way down to 1. Actually 0, that costs 7. So my Praetorians are going to use their Keymaster ability, which they still have because these buffs, they basically are lifted next time Emilia is activated. And she hasn't activated yet, so they still have Keymaster and they still have Royal Executioner, which we'll see what this does in just a minute. So Keymaster allows me to move 3, 1, 2, 3, and materialize there, and I can do that for each one. So that's my final position there, using my Keymaster. And then I'll use CS to move. I have 4 CS with these guys. I'm going to use 2 CS by moving here because that's a resistor. Actually, no, that's impassable, isn't it?
No, that's shattered. It's a resistor.
So I am able to move there. That's only line of sight blocking. So facing actually matters in this game, so we'll face him that way. And all the rest are able to move adjacent to him. So I will go like this. They'll go this way. Just as a side note, whenever I move, I'm able to freely change my facing. It doesn't cost any extra CS to do that. Now, if I was on one square and I wanted to change my facing and not change the square I was on, that costs 1 CS. Now it's time to attack Tav with my Praetorians. Now they have tactical riot gear and their range is melee, so that means that they are only able to attack when they are in base-to-base contact. How the attack works is I roll these 3 12-sided dice, and I'm looking for these symbols. A chip, a short, and a crash. That's what I'm looking for. So I get 2 chips. So it looks like I got 2 chips there, and they count as my attacks. Now, any extras that are required are redundant, so they don't count as any more damage. So I only actually get 1 chip. And since I get 1, I look at the first number there, which is 2. But I still have Royal Executioner, as is granted by Emilia. That's a buff that she gave them, which gives 2 extra damage per attack. So that has 2 plus 2 is 4 damage that I inflict upon Tav. So with our dry erase, we're going to mark off Tav's hit points there. Now, when programs are attacked, that's where their safeguards come into play. So we're going to take a look at Tav's safeguard. And he's got an ability called For the Cause. So after damage is applied, Tav must suffer 1 additional point of damage. The attacking model suffers from burnout at the start of its next activation. So he basically just throws something on them and they are now burning, which is pretty sweet. As much as that safeguard comes into play, we're going to take a look at the Praetorian's coordination ability, the Gauntlet. It says, if this attack causes damage, which it did, after damage is applied, you may shift the target model 1 square for every model in this program that is adjacent to the target model. And looking at the amount of models that are adjacent, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can actually shift Tav 4 squares away. And I can move him diagonally as well. So I will go 1, 2, 3, 4. Tav's burnout token is going to go on the Praetorians, and Tav is now in the quantum noise, which is, that's a big deal. That's not good for programs to be in the quantum noise. And we'll see what happens when a unit or when a program is in the quantum noise in just a moment. So when a unit enters quantum noise, there are 3 reasons why they would take damage. So one is the model enters a square of quantum noise during its own activation or ends its own activation in a square of quantum noise. This has not been the case. 2, a model that begins its activation in quantum noise does not suffer damage unless it exits and re-enters or ends its activation within quantum noise. Again, not the case. But the third case here, the model enters a square of quantum noise during another program's activation, in this case because it has been forced into the noise by an enemy or collapsing schema, etc. That is the case. In any of the above situations, immediately roll 1 combat dice and then record damage accordingly. So we're looking for these 3 symbols, and that's how much damage occurs per symbol. So we're looking for a short. Actually, we're looking for a crash. Really, because a crash flat out kills or deletes the program. So Tav would be completely deleted if that happened. Rolling a die, see what happens. Yeah! And that's a crash. So Tav has been deleted, so that's actually the best case scenario. I just wanted to show you guys what would happen if that happened. And that did happen, so Tav was deleted. Since Tav was deleted, we take him off and we take a look at the console damage underneath. It says, this collective may no longer spend RAM to shift or rotate medium schema, which is actually a big deal. So if you take a look at it, this schema right here, or potentially this one back here, the Nanomei can no longer rotate or move these schemas. So that eliminates a lot of your tactics and mobility. Another thing to note is that because this function has been deleted, Luka gets 2 more RAM per recalibration, and that's just to signify that it's less hard to process everything on this command console. And then Tav is pulled out of this deck, so that now when you reorganize your program activations, it's only between these 2. It's between the Riot Girls and the Mask. And also because of that, Luka is going to be recalibrating much more often than I will be, which means he's going to go through his programs much quicker. And once he reaches 5, and once he finishes the 5, then he will be done activating his programs. That doesn't mean that the game ends for me. I still get to activate my programs, and I'll have a lot more turns where I'm able to do actions. So the advantage of taking out a program early on in the game is huge. So he immediately gets the 2 RAM for having Tav deleted, and now it's his turn. So he's going to recalibrate, go to 1, and figure out how much RAM he gets. 3 for the Mask, so that's a total of 5 so far. And we're going to look at the pylons he controls. He controls 1, 2, so that's an additional 2 RAM for a total of 7. And then Luka is going to activate a program, and he has chosen to activate the Mask. The Mask is going to use his CS and move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
7.
6, 7. He had 6 cycle speed. He had to use 1 extra to overclock, using a ram to do so. So he has 2 more overclock action points that he's able to use, and he's not going to use them, but he is going to attack me. Something very important to note is that it doesn't cost any CS to attack. So to make your melee or your ranged attacks, it doesn't cost anything to do that. The mask has the hidden blade, and that's the criteria for him to be successful. As you can see, his damage output is actually really, really high. So let's take a look at what he gets. He's going to roll here. There's 3 dice. So he gets 1, 2. That doesn't count. It has to be a crash, so he gets 2, so that would be 6 damage. However, we're going to look at the safeguard that Amelia has. Looking at Amelia's safeguard, which is Badge of Office, it says before rolling the combat dice, instead of using its normal target symbols, the attacking program must change its target symbols to disruptions. And the disruption symbol can also be used to trigger disruption effects as normal. So as you can see, these are normal, and there's only actually 1 disruption symbol, which means the damage goes from 6 down to 4. Mark it on her card. She has a total of 12 hit points. She's down to 8. Play passes to Axiom, so I'm going to activate my next program, which is my Grenadier. My Grenadier is going to move this way and actually face that way. Is range 5, so we're going to count the squares, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I want to be able to hit the Riot Girl in the middle because I have an ability here called Fragmentation, which says that if this attack causes damage, all models, friendly and foe, adjacent to the target model suffer damage equal to half the damage rounded up that the target suffers. Something to note is line of sight and choosing targets. So first thing that we'll do is see if I'm shooting through any line of sight blocking tiles, which I'm not. Those are impassable and disruption tiles, or resistant tiles, which don't block line of sight. The next thing I gotta do is check the line of sight from my base, and this is where facing is important. I'm facing this way, which means what I do is I pick any part of my base, and I need to be able to see 2 points from the enemy that I'm firing at. I'm firing at this Riot Girl, and I'm able to see this point and that point. So after closer inspection, this one is actually covered, and so what I'll do is I'll focus my shooting attack to this Riot Girl because I can clearly see the 2 front points of her base. And that's because all models block line of sight, friend or foe. Taking a look at the Riot Girls here, their hard to hit safeguard ability says before making the attack, the attacking model rolls 1 less combat dice. So it's important to look at the safeguards of the programs before we're rolling attack dice or combat dice. So instead of 3, I roll 2, and that's my criteria. Let's see what I get. The most I can ever get is 4 here. And I get 1. 2. I actually get 2, because that's that. And because that's double disruption, and that's the criteria for fragmentation, that also goes off. So it says all models, friend and foe, adjacent to the target, suffer damage equal to half rounding up. So it would be 2 damage. 4 damage on this Riot Girl and 2 damage on that Riot Girl. So basically 1 Riot Girl is killed because they're 4 hit points each, and the next one is damaged half. Now I still have some cycle speed that I'm able to use for this Grenadier, so I'm going to take a look at his EXE ability, which is Smoke Grenade, and it costs 2 cycle speed for that. It says place a cover token in any square within 5 squares of this model. That square and all adjacent squares grant cover to any model, friendly or enemy, that is attacked while occupying one of those squares. This lasts until the start of this program's next activation or until it's deleted. So here's my cover token. I'm going to place it there because it's adjacent, and I now benefit from cover. And what does cover do? Well, it's the same thing as the Riot Girl's hard to hit safeguard, which means that when units or when programs are attacking me, they roll 1 less combat dice. Activating the next program on the Nanomei side, which is the Riot Girls, the subroutine. And on Luka's next activation, he'll be ready to recalibrate. Just noting that. 4 cycle speed each, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now they have a ranged ability, so that's actually really good for them. So they have highly illegal weapons, ranged 4, which my Amelia Mestrona is certainly within range. And you're going to roll your dice. Now you have your riot ability, which allows you to actually re-roll the dice should you get a disruption. So here are your dice, and you get 1 disruption, but you actually get all 3 criteria. So you get 5 damage. Now that's if I didn't have my safeguard on Mestrona. So Mestrona has her badge of office, which means that you must roll disruptions. So you have a disruption, which your riot ability allows you to re-roll your roll. Do you want to re-roll that?
I would love to.
And you get 2 disruptions there, which means that your damage is now 3. So 3 more damage, down to 5 hit points left. Now the second riot girl is going to activate. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And she as well is able to see 1, 2 points of my base on Mestrona, so you're going to go ahead and use your highly illegal weapons as well. And you are overclocking here?
For that extra movement.
For the extra movement.
No, got nothing.
So you got nothing, so you don't have any disruptions either, which means that you can't even re-roll that.
Correct.
Now on to Axiom turn. I'm going to activate my last program, which is Amelia Mestrona. And she's going to get these 2 things back. They replenish. She's able to do whatever she wants with them, and she can determine what she wants to do. Amelia, she's going to use her passive EXE ability and materialize. There you go. 3 squares that are away from where she is right now. So she's going to go 1, 2, 3. And then she's going to move right there behind that riot girl. Now, because she's moving adjacent to an enemy, it actually costs an additional CS to do that. So moving that 1 square away will cost her 2 CS. She's going to use another 3 CS to put Royal Executioner on herself, which gives plus 2 more damage to any attack dice that are successful. And because Amelia is attacking this riot girl in her rear arc, that actually affords me an additional combat dice. So instead of 3, I get 4. But because they have their safeguard, they take away 1, that goes back to 3. So might as well mitigate that by utilizing the ability that I have to attack. Now that's the same for all programs. When you attack in their rear arc, whether it's melee or ranged, you get an additional combat dice. We're looking for a switch short. And we get 1 switch, which means that it is 1 damage, plus the 2 for Royal Executioner, which is 3 damage, which is good enough to kill off this 1 riot girl because she only had 2 hit points left. And I also need to mention that because they are segmented subroutines, any additional damage does not carry over. If it was a linked subroutine, such as these Praetorians, the damage would carry over. And there she goes. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the basics on how to play Aetherium. We're going to conclude the how to play tutorial right now because we have shown you all the mechanics of the game itself. The last thing for this particular scenario, the victory condition would be whatever faction holds this node at the end of the 5th calibration wins the game. And so that's the only difference there. But we've shown you everything that you need to know in order to play the game. It would just be a matter of recalibrating your programs and then going through your activations and continuing with your turns. And that is it. So stay tuned for the rest of the videos in this video series. We have an unboxing of Aetherium, and we also have some battle reports. Be sure to watch those. Be sure to click on the links in the video description below. Should you choose to click on the link and purchase something from the store, there is a coupon code that we have running right now, which is MiniWar12, and you'll get 15% off your purchases. So any and all purchases made from this promotion right now at their online store. And there's a couple links there, one to their store and one to their Facebook page. So be sure to click on those links. And thank you very much. Happy wargaming.